We are just a mere hours away from WWE Raw's debut on Netflix. We also talk about the fallout of a great episode of Friday Night SmackDown, the first 3 hour edition, that is. And of course, we're looking forward to NXT New Year's Evil. All this and more on today's episode of the J Area Podcast. Members of the J Area, what is going on? My name is Ramos Jr. Welcome back to another edition of the J Area Wrestling Podcast. And it's been a big week for the WWE. It's 2025, it's a new year, it's a new season, and obviously it's a bit of a transitional period here for the WWE. WWE SmackDown just recently transferred over to 3 hours on the USA Network. Of course, Monday Night Raw's debut on Netflix, and then NXT having its premiere show in 2025 New Year's Evil. So there's a lot of ground to cover here in regards to the WWE, but we're going to go ahead and start with Monday Night Raw. It's obviously Monday. It's just hours away from arguably the biggest episode that the WWE has ever produced for Raw. It's going to be from the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles, California. Many stars are expected to take part in this monumental event, but look no further than the main event. I mean, 10 years in the making. Seth Rollins, CM Punk, two of the WWE's biggest polarizing stars, certainly within the last decade. If you have been a fan of the WWE for at least the last decade, this is a matchup that you have been looking forward to and clamoring to happen, whether or not that CM Punk was ever going to make his return to the WWE. But luckily, in this timeline of the multiverse, we are going to be able to get to see that. CM Punk, the voice of the voiceless, the best in the world, someone who's been synonymous with being one of the more controversial figures in professional wrestling, whether, good or bad. He will do battle against Seth Rollins, who I think at this point in his career is really hitting on all strides. Seth Rollins has found ways to reinvent himself, has found ways to evolve as a character. Now, albeit as an in-ring performer, he's one of the very best. But to see the work that he's been doing as a character should not go unnoticed. This all started, really, in 2013, or rather 2012, I should say. In Survivor Series 2012, CM Punk is about to finish up his first year as the WWE Champion, a title that he won at the previous year's Survivor Series. He's in a triple threat match. He's facing off against Ryback and John Cena. And in the midst of the matchup, we have a little bit of interference from three unknown superstars. Now, of course, at that time, I don't think anybody knew that they were going to become as huge stars as they would. But those three individuals were then known as Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, and Roman Reigns. It was implied in the story that CM Punk had some hired guns. He had a little bit of muscle to help protect him and his title reign. They would become known as one of the greatest and most dominant trios in professional wrestling, The Shield. Soon after, CM Punk would then embark in a rivalry against The Rock. And again, more interference from The Shield. And we didn't get that much of, interaction between The Shield and CM Punk. It was always heavily implied, but never explicitly explained that they were in cahoots. We wouldn't see them interact for about a year. It would be leading into the fall of 2013, where at TLC, CM Punk actually outsmarts all three members of the Shield, defeating them in a 3-on-1 handicap. And we really didn't get to cap off this feud between the Shield and CM Punk, because this was right around the time that CM Punk leaves the WWE. He walks out of the WWE, and he would be gone for the next 10 years. While we're waiting the next 10 years, the three individuals of the Shield begin to step up. Dean Ambrose, Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins all become WWE champions. All become Hall of Famers in their own right. And as of today, as of this recording, they sit on top of the wrestling world. Roman Reigns, we know, would become the tribal chief and become one of the longest reigning, if not the longest reigning in the modern era, WWE champions. Jon Moxley, then known as Dean Ambrose, but now known as Moxley, is the current world champion over at All Elite Wrestling. And then Seth Rollins, who may have lost the world championship at last year's WrestleMania, certainly is one of the marquee superstars that the WWE has to date. But In those 10 years, we saw the rise of Seth Rollins. And his career really runs parallel to that of CM Punk. Both guys who are from like the Midwest, about the Chicago, Iowa area, they lean into the independent scene, obviously making big names for themselves out in Ring of Honor. They go into the WWE developmental system. They become premier talents. Immediately, I have an impact in the WWE. Upon Seth Rollins breaking up the Shield, which is a huge domino effect in itself, something that has consequences to this day. He would win the Money in the Bank briefcase, something that CM Punk did. They would successfully cash in those briefcases for memorable cash ins and have world title reigns that may have been overshadowed by other individuals on the card. Both individuals, their fighting style, similar. Their promos, maybe similar. I still think that CM Punk is a couple notches over Seth Rollins, but by no means is he any, bad at promo. We see him kind of get into his own as a heel. And Seth Rollins has this confidence about him. At this time, he's winning the Intercontinental Championship, the US Championship, the Tag Championship, the WWE Championship, the Universal Championship. He wins the World Championship. How about the Money in the Bank that I talked about? A Royal Rumble event that, little fun fact, I was able to see Seth Rollins win the Royal Rumble live and in living color. And throughout all this, Seth Rollins becomes the flag bearer of the WWE. He goes online and he's voicing his support for the company. He's, fighting off all the detractors. See his big, interaction with Will Ospreay during this time. He's become one of the big company men. All the while, CM Punk is not shy from voicing his opinions about the WWE, from voicing his opinions of the malpractice that they had taken place when he had his injury that might have been a staph infection. Actually, I think it was confirmed to be a staph infection. CM Punk had so much, vitriol to spew at the WWE. He had all these reasons to not go back. We knew about his issues with Vince McMahon. We knew about his issues with the medical team and the booking. He was at a point in his career where he had just fallen out of love with professional wrestling. He would try his hand at the UFC, having 2 unsuccessful matches, and it became almost a meme of sort. A lot of people were very vocal about his failed attempt at the UFC, but he gave it a shot. He tried his best, and that's all really you can ask for as an individual. Then he would move over to commentary. He tried his hand at acting, and then a new promotion called All Elite Wrestling became a thing. And a lot of people early on were thinking, could this be the opportunity to see CM Punk back in a professional wrestling ring? It was founded in 2019, and we would not see CM Punk until 2021, but it was one of the greatest returns to wrestling of all time. To see that reaction live, to see and to hear the reaction that the audience had during that episode of Rampage still boggles my mind. But it's still something that we find so surreal. I, for one, as a fan of CM Punk, personally, I had given up. I did not think he was going to come back. I thought, enough time has passed. He doesn't need to come back. He can still do acting. He's doing his commentary gig for MMA. He doesn't have to come back. Not only that, but the physical toll that it would take on your body, he does not have to put himself through that any longer. But nonetheless, CM Punk would make his return during one of the dark times in WWE. These guys were kind of slipping through a slippery slope when it came to their creative, when it came to their TV product. This was around the time that Seth Rollins was on top. And obviously, during those 10 years, whenever something that happened that was against what the fans wanted, the go-to chant was CM Punk. He was the figure. He was the symbol of the anti-establishment when we wanted to go against the WWE. If we did not like something that was being portrayed on TV, if we didn't like the outcome of a certain storyline or the progression of a certain superstar, CM Punk was the guy that people started to chant for. Everyone had a universal praise for Punk because he was able to go against the grain. He wasn't your typical WWE star. So while the WWE is trying to regain its footing, CM Punk is in AEW, having matches against Darby Allin, having a great feud against MJF, and even winning their world championship on a couple of occasions. Now, the turmoil that happened behind the scenes at All Elite Wrestling is still something that is being discussed to this day. We don't know all the answers. We have a good idea based off of reports, based off of interviews that Punk has given. We even saw the security footage of All In 2023 when Punk had his altercation with Jungle Boy Jack Perry. But given all that, that could be used as a singular event, a circumstance that could have derailed the career, the second, wave of a career for CM Punk. And when he was fired from AEW in the fall of 2023, again, it lent itself the opportunity to say he's done. He doesn't have to go back. He doesn't have to. He already made his run with pro wrestling. He tried AEW. It didn't work out. And hey, you try some and whatever. You win some, you lose some. But then we get rumors about a potential return at the Survivor Series in 2023. It's coming from Chicago, of course, the hometown of CM Punk. And how ironic is it that it's the Survivor Series where he and Seth Rollins first met up when it was the Shield and CM Punk as the WWE champion. He shows up at the end of the match that was War Games. And one of the taking points, again, was the crowd reaction. People were very receptive. It's CM Punk. It's something that we didn't think was going to happen. Number one, I didn't think he was going to come to pro wrestling back in 2021. I thought he was done. I didn't think there was any chance that he would return. No less in the WWE, I thought, given everything that had occurred, all the bad blood, no pun intended, that had been spilled, did not seem coming back. But it was a new year. It was a new regime for the WWE. Vince McMahon was gone. Kevin Dunn was gone. It's now ran by Triple H and TKO. And so maybe Punk is looking at it and saying, hey, maybe I should try my hand in making peace. Comes out to a raucous ovation from the Chicago crowd, which is always the smartest thing. If you want a great reception for CM Punk, you go to Chicago. They will never boo him. But while we're doing this, the cameras, of course, are focusing on CM Punk. But then we see other cameras capture the reactions of guys like Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins. Irate, furious. It was to the point where people were questioning, is this a work or not? Because Seth Rollins, the amount of anger, the emotion that he was displaying in that moment, you would have had us fooled that he did not genuinely hate CM Punk. And if you go back into the interviews, about a year and a half or two prior to CM Punk's return, they interviewed Seth Rollins. I believe it was for a WWE 2K event. And they asked him about a potential return about CM Punk. And he says, unequivocally, no doubt in his mind, does not want CM Punk back in the promotion. He calls him a cancer to professional wrestling. He does not want him back. That in itself, Seth Rollins is a worker. He's smart. But was he really trying to work an angle that quite possibly never would have had a payoff? Now I know, obviously, hindsight being 2020, here we are. January 6, 2025, and the match is about to occur. But did Seth Rollins go into business for himself trying to work an angle? Or was that genuinely how he felt? I'd like to think it was a little bit of both. I think Seth Rollins is smart enough to know, hey, if he ever does come back, this is something he can get into and have a match with. Or I think it's also just how he genuinely felt. Given all the reports and the rumors and the stories about CM Punk and his interactions in All Elite Wrestling and the way he left the WWE in 2014, history was not always kind to Phil when it came to his ability to cooperate with a promotion. But now here we are, 2025. Seth Rollins, CM Punk, years in the making, stories upon stories that have been built. I mean, look no further than the promo battle that they had on last week's episode of Raw. They snuck it in. It was the last episode of Raw in 2024, and they snuck it in. It might have been one of the best promos, one of the best segments that WWE produced all year. These guys, they did not hold back They did not pull any punches. CM Punk making reference to Seth Rollins and how his rise to the WWE was overshadowed by CM Punk's absence. Seth Rollins making it a little bit personal, talking about CM Punk and AJ Lee's, personal life and their lack of children. I mean, that's something you don't really go towards, right? You don't talk about the kids. These guys have bad blood. This match should be the main event. There have been a couple episodes of SmackDown. There was the big press event that happened at WWE HQ. They have alluded to it as the main event, as it should be. But part of me still thinks, I don't know. Knowing WWE, they can always just make a switch. This should be the main event. It should be the main event. I look at this match, give them 30 minutes. Give them 30 minutes, whether that's including the entrances or not. These are two guys that are going to put on a show. I mean, what a way to cap off one of the biggest episodes of Monday Night Raw. You have a blood feud of Punk versus Rollins, and I don't think it's going to be over. I really don't. I could see there being a scenario where one of these guys wins the matchup. They get in line for a world championship match, and then let's say down the line at WrestleMania, we have the rematch between Punk and Rollins. I think it's a possibility. I don't know if I would put money on it, but I certainly think this is not going to be the only time we visit a Punk versus Rollins matchup. I think it's going to set the standard here for Monday Night Raw moving forward on Netflix. I would not be surprised if we see a little bit of color, if we see a little bit of blood during this matchup, just because we've built it up this far. We know these guys can't stand each other. So I don't expect them to go out and have a mat classic and have a wrestling clinic. This is going to be a fight. This is going to be a fight between two individuals who are so alike that they want to beat the holy hell out of each other. I'm looking forward to it. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but if you're anything like me and can't get enough wrestling content, then you should consider becoming a member here on YouTube. You'll receive access to exclusive content like unique videos, live streams, shorts, and a more behind-the-scenes look of the channel itself. On top of that, once you become a member here on YouTube, you will receive priority first replies in the comments, as well as special shoutouts in future uploads. And speaking of future uploads, you'll also be able to get to decide what will be the future topics in these future videos. You can join the J Area and become a member here by clicking on the link in the description, as well as in the link under the About Me section. This is your big opportunity to see the J Area like no one else. We can't thank you enough for the continued support and the continued growth in the channel, so we don't want you to miss out on this exclusive offer. Now, let's get back to the video. Talking about these fights, right? What about combat? How about tribal combat? Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa, they're going to be doing battle on this episode of Monday Night Raw as well to determine who is the true, undisputed tribal chief of the bloodline. Now, if you ask me, it's the OTC. How could it not be? But Solo Sikoa, upon Roman Reigns' absence, has seized control of the Ula Fala and has held the bloodline hostage, essentially. This is a great example of them being able to stretch out a story. I mean, this in itself starts from WrestleMania 40 when Roman Reigns loses the WWE Championship to Cody Rhodes. Following that episode on SmackDown, Solo Sikoa begins this ascent into his, upper echelon of leaders in the bloodline. Now, whether or not it's valid, it's still something to look forward to. We thought maybe this matchup could have happened at SummerSlam. Some people thought Saturday night's main event, maybe the Royal Rumble, but no, they saved it here for the first episode of Raw on Netflix. You want to attract as many eyes as you can. The Bloodline story is the premier story in the WWE. It has been so since August of 2020. And now we're in January of 2025. And we have someone here who is challenging the position of the tribal chief against the OTC. I don't think it's going to be the only time we've seen it. Granted, we did see Jey Uso do it against Roman Reigns. But this is the first time it really feels like a big deal. Now, and now saying that SummerSlam 2023, when Jey Uso versus Roman Reigns was taking place, it did feel like a big deal, but I feel like the result was never in doubt. I think everyone knew Roman was going to win. He was going to go on, extend his period of time as champion. Solo Sikoa now is facing Roman, no titles involved. It is the Ula Fala. And if you saw this past episode of SmackDown, Paul Heyman's promo really puts over Roman Reigns versus Solo Sikoa. He did everything in his power to present this matchup as must see. It feels like a big fight, feel as it should. And then on the main event, we saw the Usos and Sami Zayn, get the win over the Bloodline, or rather, excuse me, flip that. The Bloodline gets the win. I forgot there was a near fall there. And we'll get to the SmackDown recap in a moment, but the Bloodline get the win on SmackDown. That opens the door for Roman Reigns to win this matchup, because I've seen it time and time again. The WWE will present you one thing and have you thinking that one result is about to occur just to flip it. Usually when you see the challenger hold the championship prior to the big match, he's not going to win. He's not going to win. So I would like to believe that they have Roman Reigns penciled in to win the matchup, but something tells me that Solo wins this match. I hope it doesn't. I hope he doesn't. I'm going for Roman 100%. But something in my core tells me Solo gets the win. That's just me. Roman Reigns doesn't necessarily need the title of the tribal chief of the Ula Fala. Now I know for optics, yeah, sure, it looks great. But I feel like Solo Sikoa really needs this push more than Roman needs the win. Roman's Roman. He'll always be Roman now. Ever since the introduction of the Bloodline storyline, he has carved out his spot in one of the greatest of all time. And I'm happy for him because he had to have an uphill battle against the WWE fans for so long. And now he is finally getting his acknowledgement. He's getting his respect. This will be a huge matchup. Monumental. There's also going to be a World Championship match on Monday Night Raw. Liv Morgan against Rhea Ripley. Again, another feud. A lot of these feuds are years in the making, but this one, it kicks off in 2022. We've talked about it previously on the podcast, on other videos here on YouTube. But Liv Morgan defending her World Championship against Rhea Ripley, the woman who never lost her title. Following WrestleMania 40, she defeats Becky Lynch to confirm her 1 year as champion and has to relinquish said championship because of an attack by Liv Morgan, kicking off the Liv Morgan Revenge Tour, where she would take control of the Judgment Day, she would take Dominic Mysterio, and she would hold on to the World Championship as far as of today. I think this matchup should be it. This should end the feud, at least for the time being. They want to revisit it, I get it. I feel like these two are now inseparable. This is the Batman and the Joker for these two. But when it comes to this feud, I think it's been stretched out long enough to where, okay, we need a definitive winner. We need to move off of this. I think Rhea Ripley goes over. I think she should go over. Liv Morgan has been a tremendous world champion. Take nothing away from Liv Morgan and her reign. She has been able, again, to carve out her own spot at the top of the women's division. Take nothing away from her. With that being said, I think we have Rhea Ripley win. Give the people what they want. Give her the world championship. Does she need it? No, I don't think she necessarily needs a title. But I think for storyline purposes, it makes sense. Have the Royal Rumble. I'm a firm believer that Io Sky should win the matchup. And then we move on from there. But when it comes to this feud between Morgan and Ripley, I think it's ran its course. I think it's time to move over. I think it's time to pivot. And let's focus on a new story for this World Championship. Hell, you could even have Morgan versus Ripley moving forward and just finally take the title off of them. But for the time being, we need a little bit of a break here. That's just my opinion. We also have another matchup, Drew McIntyre versus Jey Uso. Again, a little bit of a side story when it comes to the Bloodline. Jey Uso, one of the devoted members of the WWE fans. He's a fan favorite, right? I mean, the entrance is great. The vibe is great. Jey Uso is going to be a future world champion, and I'm all for it. Him against Drew McIntyre, very well maybe be the opener. I think there's a shot. I think it's going to be either the women's world title or the Jey Uso versus Drew McIntyre matchup. That will be the opener. But I think for sure Drew McIntyre is going over. The way they're presenting his character, and he's become this bloodline hunter, which I'm a huge fan of. I love this presentation of Drew McIntyre. And he's very, he's calculated. You see everything he does is for a reason. He has intent. He has conviction. It should be a great matchup here between Drew McIntyre and Jey Uso. But talk about the rise of Jey Uso. 2024 was a huge year for him. I know in 2023 is when he broke away as a single star, but 2024 took it to another level. I mean, the Backlash main event in France versus Damian Priest for the World Championship, put him on another level. I mean, you look at the entrance alone, had a shot to win the Money in the Bank briefcase. He didn't, but he had a good shot. His Intercontinental Championship reign, Yeet, has been arguably one of the biggest words of the year, and it's just Jey Uso as a character, as an attraction, has been off the charts. I love Jey Uso. Can't wait for this matchup. Jey Uso was actually a part of Friday Night SmackDown, and I wanted to share my thoughts on Friday Night SmackDown. If you are familiar with the channel and you've been with us for a while here in the J area, you know we had our live streams talking about Friday Night SmackDown, but because of the transitional period here between the WWE and their scheduling, we're going to be talking about Friday Night SmackDown now on the J Area Wrestling Podcast, and what a show it was. I mean, the first ever edition of a 3 hour SmackDown in this era, right? It was hailing from Arizona. We had a title change. We had a title change there. Tiffany Stratton, right? Before we get to that though, I want to give a big shout out to Nia Jax, who was the WWE Women's Champion. She had won the Queen of the Ring tournament all the way back in the summer that earned her an opportunity at the championship, and then finally defeating Bayley at SummerSlam. And I think Nia Jax has had the best run of her career. Her first run in the WWE was riddled with a lot of controversy regarding her inability to work a match without getting someone injured. But this second run has been fantastic. I think she's been great as a heel, better in the ring. I think she's gotten a better footing of what's going on in these matches, and I just want to give her her flowers, as well as Naomi, because the matchup that they had was fantastic. I think it was the best match that Nia Jax had during her title reign. Her and Naomi just went out and had a great matchup, and of course we saw the interference from Candice LeRae. Bianca Belair was there to help even the odds, but in the midst of it all, we see that Nia Jax gets the victory because of a Tiffany Stratton interference. She comes up with the briefcase, fakes a cash in, ultimately opening the door for Nia Jax to win and retain her championship. But then Tiffany Stratton pulls the swerve again, attacks Nia, attacks Candice LeRae, cashes in, hits the PME, the prettiest moonsault ever, to win her first ever WWE Women's Championship. It was a great moment. The crowd was on fire to see Tiffany Stratton finally get over. And again, ironically enough, when she came onto the main roster, she was one of those guys that I thought should not turn babyface. I thought she would have been a perennial heel. She plays it so well, but the crowd has willingly turned her babyface, and I thought if anyone could pull it off, maybe it's her. It was a fantastic moment. I'm so happy for her to win the Women's Championship. We get a little bit of new blood here, heading into the new era of the WWE. A great moment, a great matchup that set up this great cash in, and I guess it truly is Tiffy time for Tiffany Stratton. But Friday Night SmackDown had a lot of storytelling in it. I mean, we did have a great amount of matches. We had a tag team title match between the Motor City Machine Guns and DIY, which is always a welcomed aspect of pro wrestling for me. But very story heavy when it came to this episode. We saw the opening with Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes, which I think is one of the best feuds in the WWE right now. And we obviously know they're going to be headed towards the Royal Rumble, a ladder match. But the real point that I want to talk about is they kind of pivoted from the story of Kevin Owens and Cody Rhodes with the introduction of Drew McIntyre, which is interesting because we haven't seen him interact with Cody Rhodes very much since Cody Rhodes' return to the WWE, and they made reference to their long history, how they took similar paths to get to where they are. Both individuals had to leave the WWE, go to the Indies, build up their name to finally becoming top stars of the industry. I also want to throw out a fun fact here that Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes are actually former tag team champions all the way back in 2010 at the Night of Champions event. They won a tag team turmoil to earn that distinction of being the WWE Tag Team Champions. Two different versions of Cody and Drew, certainly, but still a fun fact nonetheless. They have this interaction where Drew McIntyre says he has respect for Cody. I'm not here to hurt you, Cody. I'm here to help you. And Cody, very hesitant already. He says, I don't trust you, Drew. He says, I don't trust you. I don't trust what you're saying. And Drew McIntyre says, you know what? Okay, fine. I accept that. He leaves the ring and told Cody, but you should watch your back. And that opens the door for a Kevin Owens attack. Are Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre in cahoots? I certainly think it would make sense. Both guys have vendettas against the bloodline, very strong vendettas against the bloodline. They were two of the main stars that were fighting the bloodline early on in those early years of the bloodline saga. So I think it would be very interesting to see those guys team up, pair them up with Seth Rollins, and create this trio of bloodline hunters who would be playing heels, but they have the logic. Like, it's hard to argue against them in terms of what they're doing. You may not like who they're doing it to or what they're doing in general, but it certainly begs the question, hey, is this something that the WWE can take advantage of? And knowing them and how they've been presenting TV in the last, 2 years, I think it's certainly a possibility. I think it would be great. Can you imagine? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe Drew, Kevin Owens, and Seth Rollins versus the Usos and Sami Zayn. It could happen. Quite, at WrestleMania. We're just throwing that out there. But nonetheless, that wasn't the only type of interaction we had that involved Kevin Owens. He, of course, had a backstage interaction with the Usos and Sami Zayn following their altercation with Carmelo Hayes, who I think is going to be a huge star, by the way. Save him for future episodes of the podcast. But Kevin Owens is walking by and kind of shoulder bumps the Usos and, saying, watch where you're going, basically. And Kevin Owens just eerily, menacingly says, you watch your back. It's all building up to something. It's building up to something. I think Drew and Kevin get together. Do they get Seth? Maybe. I think it's a possibility. But that moment, that they build up so much tension there between the shoulder bump, between Jey and Kevin, and then that last line of you need to watch your back. It's coming to a head. It's coming to a head, guys. SmackDown, I thought, was fantastic. We saw, obviously, the Cody Rhodes interactions with Drew. Kevin Owens possibly teaming up with Drew McIntyre. The Usos had a great main event. Big shout out to the main event. I thought it was a great main event. And Friday Night SmackDown certainly off to a great start. This new 3-hour format, I'm a fan of in terms of storytelling. 3 hours is a lot. Let's be real. It is a lot. Over here on the West Coast, that means that we're going to be ending Friday Night SmackDown at midnight, which is, it's pretty late there, which is why we kind of move the live streams elsewhere, because we cannot consistently do that. I don't want to have you guys being held hostage in the middle of the night for a live stream, and likewise, I can't guarantee that I'll always be available, but nonetheless, we thank you guys for appearing and consistently taking part in those live streams. They are personally the highlight of my time here on YouTube, and I will continue to do them throughout the week, so thank you very much on that. Talk about the highlights, though. NXT New Year's Evil will be presenting a big show here for them. A couple of big title matches, and NXT has been consistently one of the best shows in pro wrestling. I mean, just consistently booked. We have stars in the making who are making quite the impression. A lot of the people that you see on the main roster came from NXT. People like Carmelo Hayes, Braun Breaker, Tiffany Stratton, all came from this iteration of NXT. But this upcoming week, we have NXT New Year's Evil, and we have a triple threat match, a big triple threat match for the NXT Championship. It's going to be challengers Eddie Thorpe, Oba Femi, and of course the champion, Trick Willie himself, Trick Williams. This is a good match. I'm looking forward to it. We know Oba Femi earned his opportunity by winning the Iron Survivor matchup, so he versus Trick Williams is already a marquee match. I mean, we're talking like a Rocky 3, where he's facing off against a Clubber Lang. Like, this is a big fight feel. But then you introduce the possibility of an Eddie Thorpe win, who in his own right earned an opportunity. He was able to finagle his own spot in the triple threat match by pretending to get attacked, missing the Iron Survivor matchup, which opened the door for Oba Femi to take part in that, and then going to management, Ava, and saying, I earned a matchup. It was taken away from me. Where's my match? Gets a triple threat match. Really smart work there. Have to applaud them on that. Really smart work there by Eddie Thorpe to find a way to wiggle his way into this triple threat match. Now, personally, Oba Femi versus Trick Williams would have been a great matchup. Eddie Thorpe, I think, is a welcome addition because it adds a new level of story to the match. If you ask me, though, I think we're going to start NXT in 2025 with a new champion. I think Oba Femi wins. I think he's going to pin Eddie Thorpe. I think he and Trick Williams obviously will have a matchup to revisit this feud. But I think Oba Femi wins, pinning Eddie Thorpe, becoming the new NXT champion, and regaining the title of the ruler of NXT. And Obafemi has had quite the year as well. Won the Breakout Star Tournament in 2023 and just never looked back. The most dominant North American champion in NXT history. He has the aura, he has the star power, he has the strength, he has the look, he has the promo. He's it. He's everything the WWE traditionally looks for in a superstar. The only difference from those years of the past where it was just the big guy, he can actually go. And if he wins this matchup, it'll be a huge rocket that's already strapped to Obafemi. There's also a women's match. Of course, the women's championship will be on the line. Roxanne Perez, who I think was the WWE's Women's Star of the Year. I mean, Liv Morgan for sure has an argument there, but I think Roxanne Perez had a great year, a fantastic year, having great matches against individuals like Lyra Valkyria, Thea Hale. He was able to get a match up there with Julia. And I mean, hey, we're revisiting now. Julia will be attempting to defeat Roxanne Perez and get rid of the world title from Roxanne Perez. And again, very similar to Obafemi, I think we're going to start the year with a new champion. I think Roxanne Perez has an opportunity to move forward as a champion. We still haven't seen her against Zarya. We still haven't seen her against Stephanie Vaquer. I would love to see those matches for the title, but I just cannot see Julia losing another match to Roxanne. If there's interference, I could see that as a possibility. But even then, it's like you don't want to go to the well one too many times, and you don't want to overexpose, these attacks and use the same tactics every time. If you ask me now, I think Julia wins. But again, part of me is like, I could see Roxanne staying and having those feuds with Zarya and Stephanie. But for the time being, of course, for this episode, I'm going to rock with Julia. I think Julia gets the win, becomes the face of the women's division, hopefully has a great matchup here against Roxanne. Julia wins. I mean, look at the matchups that she could have as champion. I mean, we're talking about potential opponents in Stephanie Vaquer, Zarya, Lola Vice, Kaylani Jordan, excuse me. A lot of possibilities here. NXT's on fire. WWE's on fire. We're looking forward to it. A huge week in professional wrestling. I hope you guys are as excited as I am for this upcoming week. Of course, this would not be possible with any of you guys. I will continue to voice my support and voice my appreciation for all of you for allowing this to be what it is. The J Area has been going strong. It's been growing even stronger because of support from all of you. So we can't thank you enough. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of the J Area Wrestling Podcast. If you did, give the video a like, comment down below. What are you looking most forward to for tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw? If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all the pro wrestling content that we make here on YouTube. And of course, consider becoming a member where you're going to get exclusive perks like videos, live streams, shorts, posts, and even have a voice in future ideas for video uploads. Of course, with that being said, my name is Jey Ramos Jr. Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the J Area Wrestling Podcast. And with that being said, we'll see you, and hopefully you all enjoy tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw. Stay cool.